High-ranking researchers, controversial topics, a dedicated audience, and a joint lunch. These are the ingredients of the Lunch Debate series organized by the Center for European Economic Research at the State Representation of Baden-Württemberg in Brussels. The 20th ZEW Lunch Debate, entitled Beyond Horizon 2020, Translating Public Research into Innovation, revolved around how new scientific knowledge can be best transferred to the private sector and translated into innovative products by companies. This is just one aspect of the FRAME project by the European Union, in which EU scientists aim to better assess the impact of public funding.
Currently, the discussion is how we get more out of the research funding by the European Commission. And in FRAME, we clearly show that it's not only funding research, but it's also funding for diffusion and funding of investment linked to these research outcomes.
With his keynote speech, Georg Licht set the frame for the lunch debate. He made it clear that innovation is one of the most important driving forces for growth in developing economies and ultimately for securing our prosperity, while emphasizing the great importance of the rapid diffusion of new knowledge. In the subsequent discussion, various views and options were presented as to how this goal could be best achieved. Diego Coleman argued for the establishment of public institutions to transfer innovations to businesses.
Diffusion and adoption are not easy for companies. It's not natural for them to become familiarized with the frontier technologies in their sectors, and to develop the capabilities to implement those technologies into their production process, into their business models. And unfortunately, there are no markets for that capacity. This is not something that you can go and buy in the grocery shop like a tomato. Like, technological knowledge doesn't come prepackaged for you to consume as a business leader. And so that's a missing market. That's a reason for governments to intervene in creating institutions that bring that technological know-how to companies.
The Finnish professor Maija Makarov takes one step back. She wants scientists to be constantly aware that their research will later serve a specific purpose.
So fundamental researchers, they should think about the context where perhaps their research findings would be useful. So we need a mindset there, and then they have to have support from two very important organizations. One is, if we talk about academic researchers, one is the universities. So the universities should write in their strategies the aim to translate benefits to society from the research that their researchers are delivering. And then the other organization, which is so important, is the research councils, the research funding organizations. Now, most of the research funding organizations in Europe, of course, we know they fund basic research, but also they should consider whether to establish some programs which would support the translation of results coming from basic research to benefit of society.
Luc Souter stresses the importance of having appropriate political and economic conditions to diffuse new research results or technologies. Some technologies may require the creation of new markets to be diffused. He takes the example of achieving sustainable transition, in which creating a market for carbon prices is needed. If, for example, CO2 emissions were priced, it would be cheaper for companies above a certain level of emissions to invest in new technologies to avoid emissions. This would both favor the diffusion of research results into the private sector and contribute to solving major societal challenges.
If we look around us and we see all these societal challenges, it seems as if these societal challenges are being addressed by scientists and researchers, but the translation of these research areas into impact, into results, into new ideas about how we address these societal challenges, including sustainable development goals, for instance, at the global level, are not yet really fulfilled.
Kurt van de Berge gave some insights on how the EU's new research program, Horizon Europe, plans to increase the speed of knowledge diffusion into the private sector and accelerate the adaptation of new findings.
We will try to better cover the research and innovation value chain from the fundamental research all the way to readying for market deployment. What we see in Europe, for example, is that we have as many startups as in the United States, but these startups in Europe don't grow. And that is a system failure. And that is something we will try to address through the European Innovation Council, which is a novelty in Horizon Europe, to help these companies, these startups in Europe grow into European and even global champions, to show that Europe can also invest in the winners of tomorrow. And this is not picking winners. This is very different from picking winners. The other novelty is that we will have more a mission-oriented approach, where we will not say we will fund a subject because the subject is important or because the subject has much potential, be it technology or something else. We will say this is the kind of thing we want to achieve, this is the goal we set that we want to achieve by a certain time, and then we will mobilize our resources to invest with many stakeholders, many actors, researchers, innovators, and many other people involved in order to achieve that mission, so that we can say what impact we try to achieve and we can measure whether we achieve that impact.
All panelists finally agreed that it should be necessary for research projects to have a proven benefit for the economy in order to receive public funding.
What clearly comes out of the discussion today is that we should look at research funding from the impact we're trying to reach with research.
The lunch debate was concluded with questions from the audience, who gained a deeper understanding of the importance of research for the economic success of companies and ultimately for economic growth.